And here we go. It's another Penguins live chat here on the Pittsburgh Hockey Now platforms. Hi, I'm Dan Kingerski. And no, we're not having technical difficulties. I made the mistake. I sat down. I started making notes. I started looking a couple of things up, and then like, oh, it's 106. So by the time I walked over to the studio here in the Grand Palace, Shea Kingerski, and we hit live and we go. So this is going to be probably not a 90-minute chat like Francis Anzalone and I had last week, where we really got into the nuts and bolts of the pros and the cons of the top coaching candidates. No, I think we're going to kind of provide an update on the coaching candidates today, as well as potential roster fallout for some of the top candidates. I think maybe that's where we start looking. I think Kyle Dubas has to take into account a couple of different things, and we'll begin our conversation here. Do me a favor, like, subscribe, and all of that fun stuff. What Dubas, I think, might have to take into account, we talked a little bit about this last week, is that the coach he hires next week or in 2 weeks will probably not be the guy who is there at the end of this process. In fact, there's a great likelihood it won't be. You look at every rebuild around the NHL, at least that I can think of. I mean, off the top of my head, I went through them all. Detroit stuck with Jeff Blashill way too long, and they still haven't gotten there. Ottawa flipped, went from DJ Smith to Travis Green. And what other rebuilds are we really going to get into? I mean, San Jose has been through a few coaches, and Anaheim has been through a few now, and so on and so forth. So I think Dubas has to take that into account. He might really want one candidate, but realize that he's going to burn that candidate. He's going to have to, in 2.5 to 3.5 years, say, that's it. Sorry. Unless Dubas is really confident that he can get this cruise ship turned around in a good old Western PA creek, I think he has to maybe adjust his focus. I'm going to write about this, as soon as we're done with the live chat here today. I've already written the article on the 3 primary qualities I believe the next Penguins coach will have to possess. And if I'm being honest, the more I talk about it, the more I hear about it, Todd Nelson is I think he's the guy. Unfortunately, I see fans getting all, emotionally invested in other candidates. And I'm just going to tell you straight up now, don't do that. If you get all huffy and mad and hot and they didn't hire my guy, you're going to be unhappy like 90% of the time. Let the process play out. Try to, maybe guess what Dubas is going to do, but don't be that person that demands their coach, because I promise you're not in on the interviews, and I promise you there is lots of stuff that you don't know. We have brought as much about these guys to you as possible, from the people who know them the best, the people around them, the people who have to work with them, the hockey insiders who have to coach against them, or the Todd Nelson piece on Pittsburgh Hockey Now on Tuesday. To be honest, when I started making some calls, I didn't realize how highly people thought of him. I also didn't realize how old he is. He's 56, which really, I think, lends itself to that transitional coach, that temp guy, come into Pittsburgh, do a great job, and then maybe you get hired by a winning team. That's the goal, I think, here. Or if Dubas has a couple of, genius strokes and all of a sudden, you're 2.5, 3 years in and then you're ready, maybe things change. Maybe you do get a couple or a few more years with a good team. So that's what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about the coaches, and then the second chapter to that, the Lego block that gets stacked on top of that, not stepped on at 6 a.m, will be the roster fallout. What will Dubas need to do for each of these coaches? So let me take care of a couple questions. Brandon says, any word on the Shabanov signing? All right, kids. Let me lay something down here. If I had it, I'd tell you. Kathleen Madigan used to do this great joke. I mean, I remember watching Kathleen Madigan do stand-up comedy 30 years ago. I mean, she was one of those ones kicking around in the early 90s. No joke. So she used to talk about being a waitress. And someone would say, what kind of salad dressing do you have? She's like, well, first of all, it's on the menu. Second of all, we have ranch, blue cheese, Italian. Which one do you want? And well, do you have honey mustard? She's like, did I say honey mustard? It's better when she does it, I promise. But people are like, hey, what about this? If I have something, I'll report it to you. Or if I can't report it, I'm not going to tell you here. So, yeah, I know some people... the Russian people really tapped into the Russian side of things. I learned some years ago not to trust a damned thing that comes out of Russia. Honest to God, it's okay to lie, to put out crap. So I don't even know that the Penguins are in on him, quite frankly. Until one of the reporters I trust throws that out there, I'm not touching it with a 10-foot pole, although it seems like some of you are like, all in on it. But yeah, if I don't tell you, you don't have to ask, because I promise you, I will. Let's go to Big Joe. Hey, Dan. With Nelson being such a player's coach, as noted in your article, thank you for reading it, do you think that there could be a problem in the sense that the Pens might need more structure to tighten things up? Well, Big Joe, you're kind of making an assumption there that just because one is a player's coach, that they lack the other things. I don't know if you watched the Mike Vecchione video that I included in that article. Vecchione is one of the alternate captains of the Hershey Bears, who was asked about Todd Nelson on Locker Cleanout Day a couple of weeks ago. What he said was, he went through the whole family thing, but he also talked about, having that commanding presence. And so I don't think those two things are mutually exclusive. In fact, I think in part, a coach has to have some riz, you know what I'm saying? I'm not going to talk like Gen Z. Don't worry. I use the English language. A coach, I think, in the present state with a lot of young players, if you can be a bit of a player's coach, you get more buy-in, I think, from some of the younger guys. And having that presence will get the buy-in from the older guys. It's actually one of the reasons I really bumped Todd Nelson to the top of my list, even ahead of Mitch Love. Especially ahead of Mitch Love, actually. That's why also, in the beginning of this whole process, more than a month ago, it's why I put DJ Smith on the top of my list, because he had that gregariousness, that personality, but also that presence to affect change, but also to get buy-in, but also a good enough coach to present, a decent game plan. I think the biggest thing with a few coaches around the league is they don't really have that big picture game plan. And a few more have a game plan, but don't connect with the team in any significant sort of way. I do think there will be a coaching vacancy, another one very soon on Long Island. I also wonder, I do wonder a little bit, like 1%, 2% on Rod Brindamore. If Florida just, brooms them tonight, just knocks them off the ice, and that was an aberration in Game 4. I think you have to have a serious talk with Brindamore, and I think that seat starts warm next season. But you ask about the Penguins, so that's the thing. Brandon, fun fact, Todd Nelson was drafted by the Penguins and played one career game in Pittsburgh. Brandon, where are you? That was in the article yesterday. Played one game for the Penguins, 2 games for the Capitals. Come on, man, keep up. Let's go to Alex with a Santa Claus icon there. Hey, Dan, could you see a fit for Erik Karlsson? Oh, we're going right to the trades already. We're just jumping past the coaches. I'll tell you what, Alex, we're gonna come back to you. So I do want to talk a bit about. Let's go back to Todd Nelson here. I want to get the information of this chat out rather than just skip all around with the questions. When I reached out to some people who are very friendly to Pittsburgh Hockey Now around the Hershey Bears organization, the response was overflowing praise. I'm not kidding. Listen, we've talked to people about Mitch Love, and people really like him, and they praise his hockey acumen and his success, and they're like, yeah, it's his time. But when we ask about Nelson, the praise was very personal. How well he treats people, how quickly he created a small family around the Hershey Bears. And he had immediate success in Hershey. Calder Cup. Didn't quite get there this year. I think, some of his players obviously have aged out. They're up with the Capitals, weren't able to be sent down, so on and so forth. But Hershey, you win 2 of the last 3 Calder Cups with that guy right there, and everybody is still roundly praising him, almost in reverential isn't the right word. It's not quite the word I'm looking for, but genuine affection for the guy. He's had a long road. As Brandon, pointed out with his Sheldon Cooper fun fact, that yes, he was Nelson was the Penguins' 4th round pick back in 1989. Played one game for the 91-92 Penguins. So he was, at least for a week anyway, surrounded by Hall of Famers and Stanley Cup glory. Kind of bounced around. He played, I think it was 93-94. He played 2 games with the Capitals, but then his career just, he returned to the minors, bounced around the AHL, the IHL, finished his career. I don't know if some of you realize just how low he went to begin his coaching career in 2001-02. He went to the UHL in Muskegon. The U-Haul League was below the ECHL. If you bounced out of the ECHL but had the itch to keep playing, you went to the U-Haul. That's how far down the ladder he went. That's basically single A-ish hockey. It's not, maybe it was a little better than the Southern Professional League, but not much. So he was an assistant coach / player in his final season. They win the championship. He gets called up, to Grand Rapids as an assistant coach for 1 season. Back down to Muskegon. He must love Muskegon, Penguins' former place. That's where Borky played his AHL hockey, was Muskegon. I digress. And this is all just from my memory. And so I'm going to probably miss a spot here or there. But he spends 3 years coaching the UHL Muskegon team. has success. I think he won a couple of UHL championships. Gets called up to Grand Rapids, where he's now the head coach. Has success there. Atlanta Thrashers. That's where it was next. A couple of years under John Anderson. I don't remember much about John Anderson, if I'm being bluntly honest. I don't remember John almost at all. They, obviously they get broomed, franchise moves, et cetera, et cetera. Then he goes, he's a head coach somewhere after that. I can't remember where he was the head coach in the AHL. 4 years in Dallas under both Jim Montgomery and Rick Bowness, and then to Hershey. So it's been a wild ride for Nelson. He's 56, like I mentioned before. But believe me when I tell you, the people around the Hershey Bears absolutely love the guy. Now, Mitch Love. Let's talk about Mitchie. Because I know here's the one thing I haven't cracked anybody. I've come close. Is it has to be him or I'm not happy. Well, then take your ball and go home, because you don't get a say in this matter, and I promise you don't know as much as the people making the decisions. You're not in the interview, so how can you possibly say things like that? There was a commenter on PHN today. It has to be Love. Well, no, it doesn't. It absolutely does not have to be any of these guys. But Love is a finalist, according to The Athletic, with the Boston Bruins. It's down to Marco Sturm and Mitch Love. I think those are two pretty good candidates. It seems like the Bruins have been in love with Sturm for a while, but hey, Mitch Love is still there. As another astute PHN commenter pointed out, Mitch Love is from the Northwest. Seattle is still open. I don't know, maybe he has the same feelings on Seattle that I do and doesn't want to go back to that city, or doesn't want to leave, or doesn't want to live there or thereabouts. But, Mitch Love's career began under Kevin Constantine. Remember that name? As an assistant coach with the Everett Silvertips of the Western Hockey League. And I think we've been over Mitch Love's success literally at every single level. Just, 2 years and up, 2 years and up, and 2 years and up. So here we are now. Mitch Love, has his couple years in, and now it's time to go up. I don't think Mitch Love is the right guy for the Penguins. I'm going to tell you that straight up right now. I'm going to dive right into the opinion part of this. I don't think Love is right for the Penguins. And there's, Kyle Dubas providing some thoughtful answers. I'm glad I didn't wear that same sweater at his press conference last month or a few weeks ago. That would have been awkward. I have two of them. I like the color. Maybe Kyle saw mine and had to copy me. I don't. Regardless, Mitch Love and Kyle Dubas probably are a great match, but there are two drawbacks. One, the Penguins' direction. Why would a coach who has options choose a situation that is still on its way down before it can come up? That's a huge problem. If you don't handle that well, you might not get another shot for several more years. Look at Mike Sullivan. Mike Sullivan was the coach of the Bruins for a couple of seasons. Missed the playoffs in one season. Wasn't a head coach again for a decade. Think about that. Oh, Mike Sullivan was so great and so smart and all of this, and that's all true. Didn't get a shot for a decade. You have to be mindful of where your team is headed. Two, Mitch Love is kind of a defensive coach. I don't see that being where the Penguins want to go. I don't see a defensive coach being able to come in and get the most out of what we expect will be left of the Penguins roster in the fall. That's just best for some other team. Let him, God bless him. I just don't think it's right. I think you need a bit of an up tempo. I'm not saying fast. I'm saying up tempo, attacking, aggressive sort of style with the Penguins. I think that's their DNA. That's the hockey DNA in Pittsburgh. And to go against that has not worked out well. It never works out well in any city when you go against the grain and try to change everything. Also, I don't know how defensive Mitch Love would be as an NHL head coach, but if he goes too, you really want to watch boring defensive hockey? Come on now. All right. So, in terms of roster fallout, I think you can bring in a different type of player with Todd Nelson or DJ Smith compared to a Mitch Love. I think if you do go with Mitch Love, you have to adjust your roster with better defensive players. If you go with a DJ Smith or a Todd Nelson, what you can do is I think you can drop a couple more of these experiments into the room. I think a Todd Nelson, I keep saying Todd Nelson. He actually just has one name. Maybe if you drop Nelson into the mix, maybe a Philip Tomasino is a little better. Maybe he pulls a bit more out of Kevin Hayes and Tommy Novak and P.O. Joseph. That would be a prime one, quite frankly. If they can create that kind of atmosphere where guys are encouraged and compelled and are kind of on the positive, if everyone's feeling positive, maybe you get more out of some of these experiments and reclamations and projects. Whereas I think if you get in like a more of a hockey coach, you understand what the semantics of what I'm saying there? If you're getting a tactician, you're not going to necessarily have that sort of environment and atmosphere, and you're going to need better players that fit the tactician's chalkboard. I think that's maybe the biggest roster fallout. And, Dubas is going to have plenty of time. He wants the coach installed by the organizational meetings, which happen, in the mid-June area. As all the scouts come in, they get all set for the NHL draft. Although this year it's a little bit interesting because they won't be all then flying to LA for the draft. They will, in fact, be staying in Pittsburgh. Cranberry, no less. Glad they built the second hotel there, huh? So you're going to see, perhaps that's why you haven't seen any transactions or real roster moves just yet, because they're going to wait to see who they have and how they can fill in around that coach or what they can provide for that coach. All right, let's see here. Let's go. Brandon says Nelson is definitely a winner, no doubt about that, but is he really a Carberry type? Brandon using our own words against us here. I appreciate that. Because Francis and I have talked about Kyle Dubas probably starting at Spencer Carberry and working backwards and looking for that type. And no, I don't think Nelson is a Carberry type. Obviously, he's working under him in the Capitals organization. From what I understand about the relationship between Washington and Hershey, at least as it stands right now, is Nelson did his own thing with Hershey. He wasn't doing a Carberry system. He was doing Todd Nelson's system. For whatever it's worth. So, no, he's actually not a Carberry type. Maybe Dubas. I'll also state this. I think I've buried this little nugget deep in a story, maybe two. This is the first time in Kyle Dubas's career that he's conducting a coaching search. First time. Is that amazing? He's been a GM now for, 6, seasons and a movie. Not counting his, I guess he was the GM of the Toronto Marlies. So before that, 7, 8 years, he's been a general manager. This is his first wide net coaching search. Because when he was in the AHL, he brought Sheldon Keefe. And they had the past relationship. So it was like, come on, you're the coach. When he had to replace, was it Dubas that replaced Mike Babcock? In came Sheldon Keefe. And in Pittsburgh, he already had Mike Sullivan. So this is the first time that Dubas has had to do this coaching search. And if he didn't learn anything or isn't learning anything in this process, he's doing it wrong. And I can almost assure you he is learning things both about what he wants or thinks or needs, but also about his team. People are telling him, okay, here's what I see. And he's getting all of these opinions from very smart hockey people. This is probably a pretty good thing personally for Kyle Dubas. Let's go to Brian P. Really like those Anzalone podcast. Yeah, I really enjoy doing them too. Perhaps one after the coach is chosen and one after the main free agency period subsides. Oh, don't worry, Brian. Francis and I do this, have Francis on as often as we can. He is the CEO of the TPH Hockey Academy and the Total Hockey Package program. So his schedule is a bit tight. He can't always just take off, 90 minutes at 1 o'clock on a Wednesday to come and do this with us. But he actually sent me a text a couple days ago and said, hey, we should do a show live outside of the UPMC Lemieux complex. I was like, oh, that would be interesting. I might have to buy a Starlink to pull that off. I'm not sure if we can do it on 5G. I have, I suppose, on the road already. We'd probably have to be across the road in the grass or, somewhere off the grounds unless we got permission from the Penguins. That would be interesting. I'm on board if it ever stops freaking raining. Let's go to Flux. By the way, Flux is Matt Meager, and we hired Matt this week to start doing some draft videos of the top prospects on the National Hockey Now network. He's already got the first one all but buttoned up. And so you stop by the live chats and you get a job, apparently, sometimes. Anyway, let's get to the Flux CC question, with Todd Nelson being known to not give a hoot if you're a star or not. If you aren't playing the right way, he will bench you. I haven't heard that, but I could see that. Do you think the core veterans would respond well to that? No. No, I do not. That is the fast. Just rewind the clock to 2000. Which year did Kessel just decide he was not having any coaching? And was it 18 or 19 when Kessel just clashed with basically everybody? And he and Malkin were kind of riding roughshod over team meetings and such like that, until even Malkin said, wow, we're going way too far, and pulled back, and Kessel didn't. So by the end of the season, it was very, very easy to make that decision to trade Phil Kessel. Was that 19? But just, no. Just imagine scratching one of those guys at that point. Would have lost one or multiple people. It would have been a whole mess. That's the difficult thing. You don't scratch star players because they get doubly embarrassed. You scratch Kevin Hayes, he's angry, he's embarrassed, he gets over it. You scratch Evgeny Malkin, now you've got a problem because he is looked up to in the locker room. And as much as you might say on paper, you've set the tone, set an example, and everybody else falls in line when you do that. I mean, John Tortorella does that everywhere he goes. He takes dead aim at his number one center or his star players, the Sedins and Ryan Johansson and Morgan Frost And who else did he kind of go after in Philadelphia when he first got there? Just takes dead aim at some people and try to get others to fall in line. I don't know that it doesn't always work. And as Torts found out in Vancouver, and actually as Mike Sullivan found out the hard way as well, it can go sideways on you really quickly. I mean, Torts and Sullivan lasted 1 year in Vancouver. So you are playing with fire. You are absolutely playing with fire, and you would need to know. You'd have to really have your finger in the air, gauging the temperature. Hang on. If the team would support you on something like that, or if you'd lose them. It really is a high stakes sort of gamble there. Okay, I'm going to skip over the Erik Karlsson trade talk for a second here. Let's go to Michael. Will a coach want to take on a rebuild? Well, I mean, if you have your choice between a team that's going to go for it next season, a team figuring it out that wants to go for it ASAP, and a team that has to kind of go through some stuff in order to start figuring it out, you're going to... I would agree. There are some people who know their skill sets in life. I could see a head coach saying, this is where I shine. I'm not going to win you a Stanley Cup, but I am good at this. I don't know of any of those people, but I could see, some magical world that, a coach like that. Maybe that's DJ Smith, quite frankly. Maybe that's Todd Nelson. I don't know. That regular dude says, I'll suffer through boring hockey if it means at least 2 playoff games in Pittsburgh in April. You say that now. You believe that now. That is a highly believed and espoused opinion that falls flat every time. The Pittsburgh Penguins were in the playoffs every year without Mario Lemieux, and they were drawing 10 and 11,000 people because they were playing boring defensive hockey. They even had multiple playoff rounds, and they struggled to sell out with Jaromir Jagr leading the team. A very, very popular Jaromir Jagr. You say that now. I was almost dove into Michael Therrien. Let's see here. Okay, so I can get back to the Erik Karlsson stuff here. I'm going to circle into where there's Alex's question. Okay. Hey, Dan, could you see a fit for Erik Karlsson in Toronto? I saw a stat that Chris Tanev had the most passes that led to shots in Toronto's Game 7 loss. So Toronto needs breakouts, a good puck-moving defenseman. Oh, man. What would happen if 2 nuclear warheads collided over a major metropolis with oil refineries, gas drilling, and a hydrogen bomb resting on a corner? I think that would be about half what would happen if Erik Karlsson was in Toronto. No. Erik Karlsson, this is my belief. Take it for what you will. Erik Karlsson needs to be the guy. He would be the 5th guy in Toronto. Maybe the 4th if they lose, or when they lose, Mitch Marner. The system in Toronto necessarily and appropriately prioritizes those talented forwards. So once again, Erik Karlsson would be back there. He can do so much more than just be a puck mover. He wants to go. But in Toronto, just like Pittsburgh, he would be a puck-moving guy who has to then go play defense. I don't see that as a good fit whatsoever. I haven't really given a lot of consideration to where he would fit. I've wondered if LA, if there's some way that LA can make something work now that Drew Doughty is, not just on the back nine, but, looking at the clubhouse. I think he would fit on a very structured defensive team in which he doesn't play by the structure, and they're like, just go. That would be quite a good fit. Does Dallas get a little bit antsy if they get run out by Edmonton? But Dallas has a very good defense. I mean, they've got offensive defensemen, and Harley and for gosh sakes, I'm forgetting their number one defenseman, the Heiskanen. So I'm doing this just on the fly here. Maybe a team like St. Louis that plays with structure and some jam, but needs more talent. I could see St. Louis. Teams like that. He's going to need. Erik Karlsson can't go to a very talented team. Erik Karlsson needs to be the talent. So that's my perception here. Panda Man. Who is more likely to start the season with the team? Jack St. Ivany or Ryan Graves? That's a great question, Panda Man. I'm going to say Ryan Graves only because I think if Graves has, a decent enough training camp in preseason, with the new coach, he's going to get a little bit more slack in the chain to try to resurrect his career. Whereas Jack St. Ivany, as things sit now with Letang and Karlsson still on the right side, and Harrison Brunick potential for the roster, as well as Connor Timmins, you don't want St. Ivany to be a fifth right-handed defenseman. So you would, unfortunately, send Jack St. Ivany through waivers at that point. Boy, that would be interesting. Yeah, because I can almost guarantee St. Ivany would be claimed. Anybody who watched the AHL the last couple of months in the season, any scouts, they would just be like on the phone with their GM 10 seconds after, 2 p.m. when St. Ivany is waived. Claim him, claim him, claim him, claim him. Especially since there is an absolute lack of righties across the NHL. I mean, there were teams scratching and clawing to find anybody. Chad Ruedel still has a job. And I would put St. Ivany well above Chad Ruedel. So, yeah, that's a fun one. That's like a bar stool debate there. I don't mean the company bar stool. I mean two guys on a bar stool. Okay, let's go to Big Joke chimes in on the Erik Karlsson stuff. If you are another team, would you even want Karlsson on your team? Sure, he's still talented, but never shown a winner's mentality, playing with the style. And when push comes to shove, would he change his game to win? I think the latter question was answered this year, Big Joe. Erik Karlsson had to change his game for the Penguins, and he did so without much luster or enthusiasm. I would say there were large stretches that Erik Karlsson was kind of existing, surviving, not thriving, and not enthusiastically embracing the challenge. And so I think that kind of answers your question there. Let's see here. Now that you mention it, Karlsson needs a Nelson. You know what? I don't know that a Nelson would help an Erik Karlsson. Erik Karlsson is self-contained. That's the best way I can put it. Erik Karlsson is self-contained. His motivation, his play, uh, his thoughts on the game, he doesn't need a lot of outside help. See here, if Brindamore comes. Oh, if Rod Brindamore comes here, Sid might finally end up in Colorado. Only half joking. Yeah. Aaron, unless they trade 71 or 58, which they never will, would it ever be a true rebuild before the old boys retire? Sure, absolutely. Just because you have an old player doesn't mean you're not rebuilding. I think some of you kind of get caught up in the extremes of the language or the extremes of the fantasy land GMing. Sure, it would be an absolute rebuild, even if Letang and Malkin stick around. I don't see why it couldn't or wouldn't be. Regarding the Kings and Karlsson, they have $21 million in cap space, and their big free agent is an RFA, Alex Laferriere. Yeah, I didn't realize they had $21 million. So, heck, maybe so, right? That would, I mean, LA has to do something to get past Edmonton. 4 straight, one and dones at the hands of the Edmonton Oilers, is it not? Or 4 straight one and dones, 3 straight against Edmonton, whatever it is. Yeah, you can't keep running it back, and hoping that somehow Anze Kopitar gets younger and you can just keep trying. They do need, as he tried to say, yeah, they do need to make a change. I saw a mock trade a little while ago with Dallas, Erik Karlsson for Bichel and Bork. I don't think Dallas quite has the salary cap space, do they? I think they have like $5 million for next season. This is why I've circled Maverick Bork as a prime Penguins trade opportunity, but not involving Erik Karlsson. Can't do it. Wouldn't be prudent. Not at this juncture. Let's see here. Let's go to Eggs Think. What's Eggs Think? That's a weird name. I'll try to figure that one out. Appreciate the work you put in, Dan. Hey, I appreciate y'all, and y'all don't need to give me Yins don't need to compliment me for me to keep doing this stuff. If you read Dan's Daily Wednesday morning, yeah, we had 6 hours of meetings at a bar/restaurant on the north side on Tuesday. Company flew in from New York. We've been circling each other. We've been talking. We kind of had, several conversations via Zoom and email exchanges. Okay, what kind of configuration? What would we want to work with them, and what they wanted to work with us, and all of that sort of thing. And they flew in really, I think they flew in to recruit me a bit. And the meetings were just perfect. I pushed on things that would be very important to me for National Hockey Now's sake, and I pushed on things that I knew that our writers would need, and how we can grow and really, get to that next level, and how it would help them. And they came back with how it would help us with what they, the tools and the toys and the knowledge that they have. When the principal of the meeting told the story of being summoned to Rupert Murdoch's office for a meeting and having to explain to him different avenues of the media empire and how things go. And it's like, okay, I'm dealing with some heavyweights here. And it was pretty cool. I was like, all right, whatever you think of the Murdoch empire, News Corp and all of that, they are damn smart people. And so I'm under an NDA still. I can't tell you all the things going on and all of that happy, fun stuff. But we handshake deal. There's supposed to be some paperwork exchange in the next couple of days, and then it's go time. But I might get a day off too. because they're not necessarily they're not buying us out. Like they're not buying me out or anything like that. But we're going to work together very closely, and the ownership structure of both companies are going to change and all that stuff. Okay, let's get Brandon's going to come back here. Do I think Raquel is still very much on the table to be dealt in order to maximize his value? Perhaps a means to bolster the blue line. I don't know. I don't think if they trade Raquel, I don't think that they are going to be looking for immediate help that won't be there in 5 years. And what I mean by that, if you trade Raquel for a defenseman, let's say, you're looking for a defenseman who's 24, 25 years old at that point, so that you can, if things work out, have him for a decade or more. That's what Kyle Dubas is looking for. You're not going to trade Raquel for a 28, 29-year-old, because in 3 or 4 years, when the Penguins really return to contending, that player is now well into the back nine. That's not what Dubas wants. So my feeling on Raquel, if he is traded, or if trade talks occur, my feeling is that Dubas has a price. He's not going to budge on that price. Here's the price. If you want Raquel, here's the price. You meet it or you don't. That's it. That's how it goes. That was kind of the way the Jacob Chychrun saga in Arizona went for almost 2 years, right? Every single blessed week, 32 Thoughts, Darren Drager on TSN, Pierre LeBrun in The Athletic and TSN. Every single week, one or more of them had the latest Chychrun rumor for almost two years. And then I think even Arizona got tired of it and sold him for less than the reported asking price. They didn't get their 2 number ones. They got 2 number twos and some other, and some change and all of that. But they ultimately sold for a lot less because they just, they could do that because Chychrun was young. Kyle Dubas can do it not because Raquel is young, but because Raquel holds such value to the core of the team. Sidney Crosby, keeping Sidney Crosby happy. Can you put a price on that? If you truly want Sidney Crosby, if you want Crosby to shepherd this rebuild, and by all intents and purposes, by all stated words, by all body language, Crosby is all in on this, right? It's a lot easier to be all in when you're playing with Brian Rust and Raquel, or Koivunen and Raquel, or Rust and McGroarty, or some combination thereof. It's a lot harder to be all in when you're playing with Avery Hayes and Rutger McGroarty, or Kevin Hayes and Koivunen. It's a whole lot harder to be all in if you're not surrounded by people who can be competitive, who can push you, who can play, who can be productive. You begin to feel like you're wasting your time. And that, I think that would be when Sid has second thoughts. If he got into a situation like that, where if he's playing with Milan Kraft and Alexei Morozov, then he might say, what the hell am I doing? I don't own this team. And Mario might pick up the phone and say, yeah, it's not so fun, is it? You don't own the team. Get out of there. Can I tell you something? I don't have a picture of Brad Marchand handy here. The fun that Marchand is having in Florida, guys shooting rats at him, the fans embracing him, just think of how much fun he's having because he decided not to be a one jersey guy. I think I think Crosby-itis is spreading around the NHL, where everybody wants to be a one-jersey player as if there's some sort of award you get at the end of this. You don't. Go have some fun like Marchand is having. He is rejuvenated with Florida. Look how rejuvenated Marc-Andre Fleury was with Vegas. Yeah, I think that second or third jersey can extend your career, can improve your life. It should be reserved only for the most rarest and special of circumstances. I digress. I got a little bit off topic there, didn't I? But you know what I'm saying. I certainly wouldn't ever downgrade Crosby's legacy if he went to play for Colorado or Montreal even. I wouldn't downgrade Crosby. In fact, I dare say his legacy would be improved, increased. Imagine the powerful Montreal media. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm really powerful. Not. Imagine the Montreal media just singing Crosby's praises every day. They would be dancing in the streets, throwing palms at his feet and rose petals on the way to the locker room. That it might be kind of fun. Let's go to Jay Biz. Do I think Florida having such a mobile, heavy, and aggressive defensive core could cause some teams to try and emulate that style of play? I've never seen a team pinch as much as they do in the playoffs. I think Florida has the best team. This Florida team would give the 17 Penguins a hell of a run. I think the 2016 Penguins were probably the best team of the century. Let me rephrase that. The best team of the salary cap era. Because that 2016 Penguins team was so... They were just ruthlessly and mercilessly fast. And with Crosby and Malkin and I guess Letang wasn't there, was he? He wanted to, yeah, that was 16. That Letang was basically going to win the Norris and then had the neck injury. I get the years sometime. No, Letang scored the winner against San Jose and then was out in 17. Yeah, 17 was when Justin Schultz and Ian Cole were, and Ron Hainsey was like the number one pairing defenseman. But still, that 16 team was so much better than everybody else. It was quite scary. Only Tampa Bay and Washington pushed them. But even when those two teams pushed them, there was no doubt in those deciding games. I think Florida could give the 17 Penguins a real run. I think Florida could give the Tampa Bay Lightning, the back-to-back champs, a run too. Sure, I think every team would love a defensive core like Florida. Big guys who don't mind using the body, who can skate. That's the goal, right? You can get 6 of those guys. Okay, Sonny, with the same GM, but with a new coach, how radically different will the style of play change for the Penguins on a scale of from 1 to 10, 10 being the most? How much change does Dubas want? Well, I don't think necessarily that it will be radically different. I just don't know until they hire the coach, right? I also think that is a conversation that new coach and GM will have. New coach, in his interview process, will have told Dubas what he sees in this roster, where he would like to take it. You would have to be a fool to look at what the Penguins have right now and say, all right, Dubas, here's the deal. I want rid of 10 of these guys. I want them all replaced by pluggers who can play Carolina's system. We're going Carolina, baby. Dubas would probably say, That's an interesting idea. Thanks for coming. Don't call us. We'll call you. So you do have to work work on the chassis with which you're provided. There'll be some changes. I personally thought the Penguins were much better, infinitely better last season when they created layers in the neutral zone. One forechecker, multiple layers in the neutral zone. I thought they were much better. A bit of a counterattack, quite frankly. But they never stuck with it for more than a game or two at a time. It was almost like this grand compromise between what made them really good and how they wanted to play. And so Sullivan would put the leash on, take it off, put the leash on, take it off, so on and so forth. I'm telling you straight up, if they had been able to keep that, that second person back, I mean, very few games did they win the forecheck battle. I just don't think they did. I mean, they did some, but I don't think overall they won it nearly enough to think that was their best game. Take it for what you will. I would assume if a new coach saw that, he would probably wrap both arms around it. And it sort of also protects your weak defensemen because now they've got an extra step to get back and get the puck. And now you've got more breakout options. Tap, 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 and away you go. Now you've got speed out of the defensive zone. Rather than trying to create turnovers and pressure in the offensive zone to create your offense. I don't know. I generally think Mike Sullivan was a whole lot smarter of a hockey mind than this bonehead me. But I just, when they went to it, they were successful. It was like, well, why don't you do that? So how different will they be? Listen, you're not going to see level 10. You're not going to see level 8, 9, or 10. You're going to see levels 2, 3, or 4 in terms of change. Yep, thanks, Randy. Yeah, Letang was missing from 17. Do I have any left-handed UFAs we could see in Pittsburgh? Not yet. I suspect that the guys that the Penguins are going to target, listen, you're not going to get anybody else. You're not going to see any 5-year deals from the Penguins in free agency. Just not. And the reason I say that is because the Penguins have said that. I'm not giving you an opinion. I'm telling you what Kyle Dubas has bluntly said. I think Kyle Dubas has bluntly said enough things that he has held on to or held true to that you can believe him when when you can take him at face value. When you don't take Dubas at face value, or when Dubas starts word salading, starts tossing out those Kamala two-tong salad bar sentences and answers that go on for 3 minutes. That's when you say, okay, there's something here, and there's wiggle room to go either way. When Dubas says, no, I don't think that works for us, take him for his word. All right, that's just about 1 hour. Hey, a lot of you are here. I am going to, I didn't make the change on the website yet, darn it. But let's talk a little bit about what we're going to do here on Pittsburgh Hockey Now over the next couple of months. Beginning today, in about, 2 minutes, we are going to have a $12 PHN Plus subscription sale. That's $1 a month for the entire year, as long as you buy the year up front. I am going to, in fact, post the link to the subscription page right now. And as soon as I hit end, I am going to launch the sale. So right now it's $40 for the year. By, let's call it $210. By the time most of you hear this, in fact, it will be $12. I would love if you could support PHN, hop on board. You get the ad-free experience. You get the PHN Plus exclusive content. You get to be a part of PHN Plus subscriber Q&As, of which I'll be doing another one. I'll put out the call for the subscribers later today, and I hope to see you on board. I do most of the work for free because we make ad money and all of that, but those subscriptions really do make a huge difference in terms of travel budget and even all of the fun employees we get to have both in Pittsburgh and around the network. So that's 1 hour. Kids, go back and check the first 20 minutes. We talked all about the coaches and then all of your stuff. Hey, it's always a pleasure. I have a blast, and hopefully you do too. So have fun.